There is a corner of North America where the air itself is a weapon. In the Alaskan wilderness, the thermometer doesn't just drop, it surrenders, plummeting to 55 degrees below zero. In this realm, the sun vanishes for months, leaving behind a void of hunger and silence. Survival here is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of pure, unadulterated biological engineering. Every predator that stalks this landscape has been refined over thousands of years by the relentless pressure of ice and darkness. The rule of this territory is clinical. The strongest do not win, only the most adapted survive. We are about to analyze the brutal efficiency and surprising strategies of the hunters who dominate this frozen kingdom. And by the time we are done, you will never view the cold as a mere weather condition again. To understand the lethality of Alaska's predators, we must first analyze the chessboard they play on. Alaska is a massive expanse of 1.7 million square kilometers, a territory larger than France, Germany, and Spain combined, yet inhabited by fewer people than a mid-sized city. The rest of the land belongs to the wild. It is a world of permafrost, where the ground remains frozen to its core, even in the height of summer. From the Brooks Range Mountains to the endless sea of the taiga forest, the climate dictates every metabolic decision. In winter, the polar night lasts for weeks, a period of total darkness that forces every living being to plan their life around a solar pendulum. In this environment, we begin with the undisputed monarch of the north, the white giant that walks on a frozen ocean. Imagine a January morning where the temperature is so low that boiling water tossed into the air turns to ice crystals before it hits the ground. In this extreme, a white shadow moves in absolute silence. This is the polar bear, or Nanook. It is not just a bear, it is a machine designed to dominate the ice. A full-grown male can exceed 600 kilograms and stand 3 meters tall. To put that in perspective, he is heavier than 5 adult men combined. Yet, despite this mass, he is one of the most resilient swimmers in the animal kingdom, capable of traveling 600 kilometers through near-freezing waters without rest. His anatomy is a masterpiece of evolutionary physics. His paws act as natural snowshoes on land and oars in the water. His skin, hidden beneath the fur, is pitch black to absorb every photon of heat from the rare sun. And the fur itself is a lie. It isn't white. Each hair is a transparent, hollow tube filled with air, providing extraordinary thermal insulation while scattering light to create the illusion of whiteness. Effectively, the polar bear is an invisible hunter dressed in mirrors, but his greatest weapon is patience. He utilizes a technique known as still hunting. He locates a breathing hole in the ice, made by a ringed seal, and waits. He might stand motionless for days. When the seal finally surfaces for air, the bear strikes with a velocity that defies his size, ending the encounter in less than 3 seconds. He can even detect a seal buried under a meter of snow from kilometers away, using his weight to collapse the subnivean dens of his prey. However, this apex predator is facing a systemic failure. His hunting platform, the sea ice, is receding. As the ice-free season extends, his metabolic window shrinks. Without the fat-rich seals, the polar bear faces biological bankruptcy. While the bear reigns over the sea, the interior forests hide a predator that is significantly smaller, but, gram for gram, far more feared. This is the wolverine, gulo gulo, a name that literally translates to glutton. Weighing only 10 to 25 kilograms, he looks like a small bear with the attitude of a demon. What makes the wolverine unique is his defiance of physics. He can cover 48 kilometers in a single night across rugged, snow-choked mountains. His sense of smell can detect a carcass buried under 2 meters of frozen earth. He is the ultimate scavenger warrior. He will approach a kill made by a whole pack of wolves and, through sheer vocal aggression and a display of razor-sharp teeth, force them to retreat. The metabolic cost of fighting a wolverine is simply too high for most predators. His hide is too thick, and his temperament is too violent. But he is also an active hunter. In deep, soft snow, he can take down an adult moose or caribou by latching onto its neck and refusing to let go. His jaws are specifically evolved to crush frozen bone, utilizing specialized back molars that act like shears to cut through meat that would break a wolf's teeth. He is the final scavenger of winter, eating what everyone else finds impossible. Yet, even this survivor is vulnerable. The wolverine depends on deep, stable snow for its reproductive dens. As the boreal winters shorten, the very foundation of his lineage is melting away. Moving deeper into the spruce forests, we find a hunter that moves like a silver ghost. The Canada lynx is a medium-sized feline, but its ecology is one of the most fascinating mathematical puzzles in biology. The lynx is biologically tethered to a single prey, the snowshoe hare. Over 70% of its diet depends on this one animal. This has created a population cycle so precise, it looks like a heartbeat on a graph. Every 10 years, the hare population explodes and then crashes, and the lynx population follows suit with a 2-year lag. The lynx is a specialist of the ambush. His massive, fur-covered paws act as natural snowshoes, allowing him to stay on top of the powder while his prey sinks. He doesn't chase. He waits behind fallen timber, calculating the exact moment to leap. If he misses, the metabolic loss is significant. If he succeeds, he survives another week. But when the hares vanish, the lynx enters a period of reproductive shutdown, a grim example of nature's balancing act. While the lynx hunts in solitude, the valleys belong to a different kind of force, the wolf pack. The Yukon wolves are among the largest on the planet, with males often exceeding 55 kilograms. In the Arctic, hunting is a social enterprise. A lone wolf can rarely bring down a 700-kilogram moose, an animal armed with skull-crushing hooves and sword-like antlers. But a pack is a coordinated unit of intelligence. They don't just attack, they conduct a siege. They track their prey for days, identifying the slightest sign of weakness. Once they engage, they use the terrain to their advantage, driving the heavy moose into deep snow where its long legs become a liability. They attack the flanks and the throat in a battle of attrition that can last over an hour. It is one of the most expensive hunts in the animal kingdom, but the caloric reward of a single moose can sustain a pack of 20 for a week. A wolf pack is not a hierarchy of dominance, but a sophisticated family business. The younger wolves serve as the labor force, while the breeding pair provides the strategic oversight. However, the wolf is a controversial figure in Alaska, often caught in the crossfire of political management and predator control programs. Their survival often depends on which side of an invisible park boundary they happen to be standing on. As the deep winter begins to thaw in March, the landscape prepares for one of the greatest mass movements of biomass on Earth, the caribou migration. These wild reindeer travel over 4,000 kilometers a year, moving from the boreal forests to the coastal plains. This massive river of meat attracts every predator we've discussed. Wolves shadow the herds, and golden eagles watch from above. But we must also consider the moose, the titan of the willows. Standing 2 meters tall at the shoulder, the Alaskan moose is the largest deer species on the planet. It is a thermodynamic marvel. Its hollow fur provides such efficient insulation that it can sleep in sub-zero temperatures without melting the snow beneath it. While not a predator, the moose is a central pillar of the ecosystem, providing the primary caloric source for wolves and bears. It is also arguably the most dangerous animal for humans in the state, more likely to charge than a grizzly if provoked. By May, the rivers break their icy seals, and a new titan emerges from hibernation. The grizzly bears of the coast, particularly the Kodiak giants, are shaped by a single event, the salmon run. These bears can reach 600 kilograms, rivaling the size of polar bears, thanks to a diet of pure protein. Millions of sockeye salmon return from the ocean to spawn and die in the rivers where they were born. For the bears, this is hyperphagia, a period of intense eating where a dominant male can consume 50 kilograms of fish in a day. This fat is the only thing that will keep them alive during the 6 months of winter sleep. For a pregnant female, the stakes are even higher. She must give birth and nurse her cubs in the den using only her stored fat. If she hasn't eaten enough, her body will simply reabsorb the pregnancy. Nature does not allow for offspring without the reserves to sustain them. In the skies above, the bald eagle and the gyrfalcon reign. Alaska holds the world's highest concentration of bald eagles, birds with a 2-meter wingspan that scavenge the leftovers of the bear's feast. But the gyrfalcon is the true specialist of the high Arctic. As the largest falcon in the world, it can dive at speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour, to strike ptarmigan in mid-air. Even the snowy owl, a 3-kilogram phantom, joins the fray, hunting lemmings in the 24-hour daylight of the Arctic summer. These birds are the aerial scouts of a changing world, forced to migrate thousands of miles when their food sources fail. Yet, as we analyze these masters of the cold, we see a common thread of fragility. The Arctic is warming at twice the global rate. The permafrost is thawing, releasing methane that has been trapped for millennia, creating a feedback loop that threatens the very ice the polar bear walks on. The salmon are arriving out of sync with the bear's emergence. The caribou are finding new obstacles in their ancient paths. Even the Arctic fox, a master of sub-zero stealth that can survive at 70 degrees below zero, is being pushed further north by the larger, more aggressive red fox as the tree line shifts. This is a kingdom in flux, where the rules of the game are being rewritten faster than evolution can keep up. But as the sun begins to dip and the rivers churn with a silver tide, the terrestrial kingdom must make way for a different kind of titan, one that bridges the gap between the frozen earth and the depths of the North Pacific. This titan is the wolverine, known scientifically Gulo Gulo, a name that literally translates to glutton. To the uninitiated, it might look like a small, stocky bear with a bushy tail, but to the analyst, the wolverine is a masterclass in physiological efficiency and sheer, unadulterated audacity. Weighing between 10 and 25 kilograms, it is the largest member of the weasel family, yet it occupies a niche far beyond its weight class. What makes the wolverine a biological anomaly is not its size, but a trifecta of traits: disproportionate strength, near-infinite physical endurance, and a temperament that borders on the suicidal. A single wolverine can traverse up to 48 kilometers in a single night, crossing jagged mountain ranges, deep snowdrifts, and frozen riverbeds without pause. To put that into perspective, it is the human equivalent of walking from one mid-sized city to the next in a single night through a blizzard at 30 degrees below zero. The wolverine's sensory array is equally specialized. Its sense of smell is nothing short of supernatural, capable of detecting a frozen carcass buried under 2 meters of packed snow. When it arrives at a kill, it does not negotiate. There are documented cases of a single wolverine approaching a pack of wolves that have just downed a moose. The wolverine simply bristles its fur, bares its teeth, and emits a low guttural growl. Often the wolves, despite their numerical advantage, will retreat. They understand a fundamental law of the Arctic. Some fights are not worth the cost of victory. The wolverine's skin is exceptionally thick. Its teeth are designed to shear through bone, and its violent disposition means that even if the wolves kill it, they will leave the encounter with wounds that could lead to a slow death in the cold. But the wolverine is more than just a scavenger. It is an active, albeit brutal hunter. It pursues hares, squirrels, and marmots, but under specific conditions, it takes on giants. When the snow is deep and soft, the wolverine's wide paws act as natural snowshoes, allowing it to stay on the surface while a 700-kilogram moose or a caribou sinks to its chest. In this scenario, the wolverine becomes a nightmare. It leaps onto the back of the larger animal, locking its jaws onto the neck and refusing to let go. The moose may thrash, run, or attempt to slam the predator against trees, but the deep snow anchors the prey, while the wolverine's endurance wins the day. It is an exhaustive, agonizing battle, where the hunter bets everything on its ability to outlast the exhaustion of its victim. The wolverine's most distinctive mechanical advantage lies in its skull. Its back molars are rotated inward at a 90-degree angle, acting like a pair of heavy-duty scissors. While other carnivores are forced to abandon carcasses that have frozen into solid stone at 40 degrees below zero, the wolverine arrives and simply crunches through. It can shatter a frozen femur to reach the marrow, a feat impossible for a wolf. This makes it the last scavenger of winter, the one that eats when everyone else is starving. Yet, this machine of survival faces a modern bottleneck. Reproduction for wolverines is tied inextricably to the snow. Females give birth in February or March, digging deep dens in stable snowpacks that must remain frozen for weeks to protect the kits. As the boreal regions warm and the snow cover becomes less reliable, the wolverine's nursery is literally melting away. They have always been a low-density species, ghosts of the frozen forest, and we are only beginning to understand their complexity as they start to vanish from the southern reaches of their range. Moving deeper into the timberline, we encounter a predator that operates with a completely different tactical philosophy. If the wolverine is a sledgehammer, the Canadian lynx is a scalpel. Weighing between 8 and 14 kilograms, this feline is a specialist in the most extreme sense of the word. Its physical form is a series of evolutionary responses to the snow. Its paws are enormous, almost comical in proportion to its body, covered in thick fur that provides both insulation and surface area. This allows the lynx to glide over fresh powder where its prey struggles. Its ears are topped with black tufts of hair that act as sophisticated acoustic antennas, picking up the faint scuttle of a rodent beneath the snow. The lynx's existence is defined by a singular, obsessive relationship with the snowshoe hare. More than 70% of a lynx's diet consists of this one species. This is not just a food source, it is a biological tether. For over a century, ecologists have tracked the population of these two species, revealing one of the most perfect mathematical cycles in nature. Every 10 years, the hare population explodes, reaching a fever pitch of abundance. 2 to 3 years later, the lynx population follows suit, peaking as they gorge on the surplus. Then, the crash comes. The hares overconsume their food supply and die off in millions, and the lynx population plummets shortly after. During these lean years, lynx females may stop reproducing entirely, and the survivors are forced to hunt squirrels or birds, but they never truly thrive without the hare. It is a pendulum of life and death that has swung with rhythmic precision for millennia. While the lynx waits in silent ambush behind a fallen spruce, the valleys below are dominated by a force that relies on collective intelligence, the Alaskan wolf, also known as the Yukon wolf. These are among the largest canids on Earth, with males often exceeding 55 kilograms. Their social structure is frequently misunderstood by the public. A wolf pack is not a military hierarchy of alphas and betas competing for dominance, but a highly sophisticated family unit. It usually consists of a breeding pair and their offspring from the previous 2 or 3 years. This familial bond is the engine of their survival. Hunting a 700-kilogram moose is a task that no single wolf could hope to accomplish. A moose is a mountain of muscle, with hooves that can shatter a wolf's skull and antlers like serrated shields. The wolf's strategy is one of extreme patience and coordinated attrition. They may shadow a moose for days, traveling kilometers across the tundra, looking for a single sign of vulnerability, an old injury, a slight limp, or the exhaustion of a pregnant female. When they strike, they use the terrain to their advantage. They drive the moose into deep snow or onto slick ice, where its weight becomes its downfall. While some wolves distract the moose from the front, dodging those lethal hooves, others attack the flanks and hindquarters, slowly wearing the animal down through blood loss and fatigue. A single moose kill is a massive investment of energy, but it provides enough protein to sustain the entire pack for a week, allowing them to endure the stretches of winter where prey is scarce. However, the wolf's greatest threat isn't the moose, it's the political boundary. In Alaska, wolf management is a flashpoint of controversy. They are protected in some areas, like Denali National Park, but in others, they are subject to intensive predator control programs designed to boost moose and caribou populations for human hunters. A wolf's survival can depend entirely on which side of an invisible line it stands on. This human-wildlife conflict is a constant pressure on a species that is already navigating the challenges of a shifting climate. As the deep winter begins to lose its grip in March and April, the landscape prepares for one of the greatest mass movements of biomass on the planet, the caribou migration. Alaska is home to several massive herds, the Western Arctic, the Porcupine, and the Central Arctic herds, some numbering over 200,000 individuals. These are the wild reindeer of the north, and their life is a perpetual journey. The porcupine herd, for instance, travels over 4,000 kilometers a year between their wintering grounds in the boreal forest and their calving grounds on the Arctic coastal plain. This migration is the heartbeat of the Alaskan wilderness. It is a river of meat and antler that draws every predator in the state. Wolves follow the fringes of the herd, picking off the weak. Golden eagles soar above, waiting for a calf to be separated from its mother. Even grizzly bears newly emerged from their dens, position themselves at river crossings where the caribou are most vulnerable. But the caribou are not easy targets. They are built for the long haul, with hollow core hair that provides incredible buoyancy in water and hooves that expand to act as paddles. Their survival strategy is one of sheer numbers, the selfish herd theory in action, where the individual's best chance of survival is to be lost in a sea of thousands. Standing in stark contrast to the nomadic caribou is the moose, the largest member of the deer family. An Alaskan bull moose is a spectacle of evolutionary excess, standing 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with antlers that can span 2 meters across. These antlers are not just for show, they are weapons of high-velocity impact used during the autumn rut. But the moose's true secret to surviving the Dines 40-degree nights is its coat. It possesses a double-layered fur system, a dense, woolly undercoat, and an outer layer of long, hollow guard hairs. These hollow hairs trap air, providing such efficient insulation that a moose can sleep in a snowbank without melting the snow beneath it. Its body heat stays entirely within its core. Despite their herbivorous nature, moose are statistically more dangerous to humans in Alaska than bears, particularly during the winter when they are stressed by hunger, or in the spring when mothers are protecting their calves. A moose cow will not hesitate to stomp a perceived threat into the tundra. As the spring sun begins to linger, the most famous of Alaska's titans awakens. The brown bear, or grizzly, emerges from its den after 6 months of metabolic shutdown. In the interior, these bears are lean and aggressive, but on the coast, particularly on Kodiak Island, they reach sizes that rival the polar bear. The reason for this gigantism is the salmon. The relationship between the Pacific salmon and the Alaskan brown bear is one of the most vital ecological hinges in the Northern Hemisphere. Every summer, 5 species of salmon, king, sockeye, coho, pink, and chum, return from the ocean to the exact freshwater streams where they were born. This is a massive pulse of nutrients from the sea to the land. For the bears, this is the season of hyperphagia, a period of uncontrollable eating where a single large male can consume 30 or 40 fish a day, focusing on the high-fat brains and skin. This isn't just about satisfying hunger, it's about biological banking. The bear must accumulate enough fat to survive the next winter, and, for females, to sustain a pregnancy while in hibernation. The impact of the salmon extends far beyond the bear's stomachs. When a bear catches a salmon, it often carries the carcass into the forest to eat in peace. The leftovers, the nitrogen-rich heads and guts, are scavenged by eagles, ravens, and foxes, or they simply decompose into the soil. Scientists have tracked marine-derived nitrogen from salmon in the needles of spruce trees, hundreds of meters away from the riverbanks. These forests are literally built from the bodies of fish. The salmon is the bridge that carries the energy of the North Pacific deep into the heart of the Alaskan wilderness, fueling a cycle of growth that would otherwise be impossible in such nutrient-poor soil. But as the climate shifts and the oceans warm, the timing of these runs is becoming unpredictable, threatening to desynchronize the very pulse that keeps the giants of the Alaska coast alive. The bears are waking up earlier, but the fish are not always there to meet them, creating a gap in the calendar that could have devastating consequences for the next generation of cubs. This seasonal instability is the backdrop for the next great act in the Alaskan theater, the awakening of the rivers and the return of the sun to the high north. As March turns to April, the sea ice begins to groan and fracture, and the silent, frozen valleys are suddenly filled with the thunder of thousands of hooves. This is the migration of the caribou, the wild reindeer of North America, and it represents a movement of biomass so vast it can be seen from space. In Alaska, these animals are organized into several massive herds, each with its own ancestral territory and rhythmic cycle of movement. You have the Western Arctic herd, the Central Arctic herd, the Teshekpuk herd, and perhaps the most famous of all, the porcupine herd. These groups can exceed 200,000 individuals, forming a living river of fur and antler that stretches across the horizon. The porcupine herd, in particular, performs one of the most grueling endurance tests of any land mammal on Earth. They travel from the boreal forests of Canada to the Arctic coastal plains of Alaska, a round-trip journey that can surpass 4,000 kilometers in a single year. The logistics of this movement are dictated by the needs of the next generation. Pregnant females lead the way, driven by an ancient biological compass toward the calving grounds in the north, where the nutrient-rich tundra plants will soon emerge. They cross frozen rivers, scale jagged mountain passes, and navigate dense forests in endless single-file lines. But such a massive concentration of protein does not move unnoticed. This migration is a moving buffet for the continent's most formidable predators. Wolves shadow the herds for weeks, waiting for a stumble or a moment of weakness. Golden eagles soar over the flanks, watching for newborn calves, and grizzly bears wait at the traditional river crossings, knowing that the water creates a bottleneck where the caribou are most vulnerable. Yet, while the caribou represent the quantity of the Alaskan wilderness, the moose represents its sheer, overwhelming scale. The Alaskan moose is the largest member of the deer family in the world, a creature so massive it seems to belong to a prehistoric era. An adult male can weigh over 700 kilograms and stand more than 2 meters tall at the shoulder. Crowning this titan is a set of palmate antlers that can span 2 meters from tip to tip, weighing up to 20 kilograms on their own. These antlers are an incredible feat of biological engineering. They are shed every year and regrown in just a few months, covered in a soft velvet that supplies blood to the growing bone. During the autumn rut, these antlers become devastating weapons used in brutal, bone-jarring battles for the right to mate. The moose is often perceived by tourists as a docile herbivore, but Alaskans know better. Statistically, more people are injured by moose in Alaska every year than by bears. When a moose feels threatened, it does not flee, it stands its ground. Its primary weapons are its front legs, which can deliver a kick powerful enough to kill a wolf or shatter a human's ribs with a single blow. A mother moose defending her calf is arguably the most dangerous animal in the forest, possessing a level of defensive aggression that few predators care to challenge. Like the other inhabitants of this realm, the moose is physically optimized for the cold. It possesses extraordinarily long legs that allow it to stride through deep snow, where other animals would become hopelessly bogged down. Its fur is a double-layered masterpiece, a dense, soft inner wool for heat retention, and an outer layer of long, hollow guard hairs filled with air. This insulation is so effective that a moose can sleep in the snow at 30 degrees below zero without its body heat melting the ice beneath it. The heat stays exactly where it belongs, trapped within the animal's massive frame. As the full bloom of spring arrives in May, the landscape undergoes its most dramatic shift as the brown bears emerge from their dens. The Alaskan brown bear is not a singular entity, but a collection of populations with distinct lifestyles. In the interior, you find the smaller, darker bears, often referred to as grizzlies. But on the coast, and specifically on Kodiak Island, you find the Kodiak bears, the undisputed heavyweights of the species. An adult male here can exceed 600 kilograms, standing 3 meters tall when reared on his hind legs. Their massive size is a direct result of the salmon-rich environment, but their survival through the lean months is a miracle of metabolic management. To understand the brown bear, you must understand the mechanics of hibernation. For 6 months, these animals neither eat, drink, nor excrete waste. Their heart rate drops significantly, and their body temperature lowers just enough to conserve energy without reaching the point of no return. For pregnant females, the stakes are even higher. They must give birth in the middle of January, in the absolute dark of the den, while in a state of semi-consciousness. The cubs are born tiny and helpless, weighing less than half a kilogram, and they must nurse on milk that is incredibly rich in fat that the mother has stored from her summer salmon feasts. If a female has not accumulated enough fat during the summer, her body will simply reabsorb the embryos before she enters the den. Nature does not permit a life that the mother's reserves cannot sustain. It is a ruthless but necessary evolutionary audit. While the bears dominate the riverbanks, the skies above are the domain of the bald eagle. Alaska is home to the largest population of bald eagles in the world, and during the peak of the salmon run, the concentration of these birds is staggering. In certain areas, it is possible to see over 100 eagles perched in a single tree, waiting for their turn at the feast. with a wingspan exceeding 2 meters and talons capable of exerting enough pressure to puncture hide and crush bone. The bald eagle is a master of opportunistic hunting. Their vision is 8 times sharper than a human's, allowing them to spot a fish breaking the surface from miles away. During the salmon migration, they form a visible hierarchy with the bears. They line the banks, watching the grizzlies' every move, ready to swoop down and snatch the calorie-dense remains the bears leave behind. However, the bald eagle is not the only monarch of the Alaskan sky. Further north, over the treeless expanse of the Arctic tundra, flies a predator that is even more specialized, the gyrfalcon. This is the largest falcon in the world, a bird of such legendary beauty and power that for centuries it was reserved only for the use of kings and emperors in Europe. The gyrfalcon is a heavy-bodied raptor, with females weighing over 2 kilograms. Their plumage ranges from a ghostly, near-pure white in the high Arctic to a dark, charcoal gray in the subarctic regions. They are built for high-speed pursuit in the open air, reaching speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour during a hunting dive. The gyrfalcon's primary prey is the ptarmigan, a bird that has developed its own remarkable defense mechanism, seasonal camouflage. In the winter, the ptarmigan turns as white as the surrounding snow, becoming nearly invisible to the naked eye. In the summer, it sheds these feathers for a mottled brown and gray plumage that blends perfectly with the lichen and rocks of the thawed tundra. It is a constant evolutionary arms race. No matter how perfect the ptarmigan's camouflage, the gyrfalcon's eyes are tuned to detect the slightest shadow or movement. When the falcon strikes, it does so with a precision that rarely misses, a testament to a lineage that has hunted these barren lands since the last ice age. The tundra also hosts another silent guardian of the daylight, the snowy owl. Unlike most owls, which are creatures of the night, the snowy owl is a diurnal hunter. This is a geographical necessity. In the high Arctic summer, the sun does not set for months, leaving no darkness for a nocturnal predator to hide in. The snowy owl is a massive bird, with males often appearing completely white, while females and juveniles carry dark spotting for better concealment while nesting on the ground. They are the heavy artillery of the owl world, weighing up to 3 kilograms, and they are almost entirely dependent on a single, unpredictable food source: the lemming. Lemmings are small rodents that live in complex tunnel systems beneath the snow. They are the foundational prey for nearly every Arctic predator, and their population follows a volatile boom and bust cycle. In a lemming year, when the rodent population explodes, the snowy owls thrive. They will lay large clutches of eggs, and the tundra will be dotted with white sentinels guarding their nests. A single owl can consume over 1,600 lemmings in a year, a staggering amount of energy diverted from the tiny scurrying creatures into the wings of the great white raptor. But when the lemming population inevitably crashes, the owls are forced into a desperate migration. They become eruptive travelers, flying thousands of miles south, sometimes appearing as far as the northern United States, searching for any landscape that offers enough small mammals to sustain them until the Arctic cycle resets. This dependency creates a fragile link between the smallest inhabitant of the tundra and one of its most majestic hunters, showing that in the Alaskan wilderness, the fate of the giant is often tied to the survival of the minute. This delicate balance is now being tested by a force far more unpredictable than the lemming cycle. While the snowy owl and the lemming represent the natural fluctuations of the Arctic, a broader, more systemic change is rewriting the rules of the entire Alaskan ecosystem. Climate change is not a distant threat here. It is an active architect of chaos, transforming the landscape at a rate that outpaces the slow march of evolution. The most visible victim of this shift is the permafrost, the ancient, frozen foundation of the North. In the Arctic plains, this ground is melting at an alarming pace, and as it thaws, it releases vast reservoirs of carbon dioxide and methane that have been trapped for millennia. This creates a devastating feedback loop. The release of these gases accelerates global warming, which in turn melts more permafrost, further destabilizing the land. The consequences of this warming ripple through every layer of the food chain, creating a phenomenon scientists call phenological asynchrony. The timing of life is losing its rhythm. Salmon are arriving in rivers either too early or too late for the predators that depend on them. Bears are emerging from hibernation ahead of schedule, only to find the rivers empty and the landscape barren of the high-calorie proteins they need to recover. Caribou, during their epic migrations, are encountering new obstacles. Rivers that should be frozen, but are now treacherous flows of slush, and plants that bloom and wither before the herds can reach them. Even the smallest inhabitants are becoming more lethal. The Alaskan mosquito, a legendary plague of the northern summer, is becoming more aggressive and numerous with each passing year. In the heat of the Arctic summer, these mosquitoes form clouds so dense they look like smoke on the horizon. They are not merely a nuisance, they are a significant biological pressure. A young caribou can be drained of so much blood that it becomes lethally weakened, and studies estimate that a healthy adult caribou can lose up to a liter of blood per week during the peak of the mosquito season. This relentless harassment forces the massive herds to flee their grazing grounds, seeking the wind-swept ridges of the hills or the coastal breezes where the insects cannot fly. It is a stark reminder that in Alaska, the most formidable predators aren't always the ones with claws and teeth. Sometimes, they are the ones that attack by the millions. While the caribou struggle against clouds of insects, a much smaller predator navigates the tundra with a level of specialized efficiency that borders on the miraculous. The Arctic fox, weighing only 3 to 4 kilograms, is a masterpiece of biological engineering, designed for the most extreme cold on the planet. Its fur is the warmest of any mammal ever measured by science, capable of maintaining a stable internal body temperature even when the outside thermometer drops to a staggering 70 degrees below zero. Every aspect of its anatomy is optimized for heat retention. Short, rounded ears to prevent frostbite, a small, blunt muzzle, and paws covered in thick fur that act as natural snowshoes. The Arctic fox is also one of the few mammals to undergo a radical seasonal transformation. In the summer, its coat is a mottled brown and gray, blending perfectly with the rocks and moss of the tundra. But as the first snows fall, it sheds this camouflage for a coat of pure, brilliant white. Some populations, particularly those living along the rocky coastlines, develop a slate-gray winter coat, earning them the name blue foxes. This seasonal shift is not just for protection, it is the uniform of a highly specialized hunter. During the winter, the fox relies on its incredibly refined hearing, capable of detecting the faint rustle of a lemming moving beneath more than a meter of packed snow. When the fox pinpoints its prey, it performs one of the most spectacular hunting behaviors in the Arctic. It doesn't run or pounce forward. Instead, it leaps vertically into the air, arching its body before diving headfirst into the snow with enough force to break through the crust and trap the lemming beneath its muzzle. The statistical precision of this head dive is remarkably high, allowing the fox to survive in a landscape where food is buried deep underground. But when hunting is scarce, the Arctic fox turns to a more strategic method of survival. It becomes a shadow. It is famous for following polar bears across the sea ice, maintaining a respectful distance while the giant hunts. When the bear kills a seal and eventually leaves the carcass, the fox moves in to claim the remains. The scraps from a single polar bear kill can sustain an Arctic fox for an entire week, a form of dietary parasitism that has existed for thousands of years and is generally tolerated by the bears, who seem indifferent to their tiny white companions. As the land dries and the tundra warms, the true battlefield of the Alaskan summer shifts toward the water. The waters of the Gulf of Alaska and the Bering Sea are among the most productive on Earth, fueled by nutrient-rich currents that support a hierarchy of marine predators as sophisticated as any found on land. At the top of this aquatic pyramid is the orca. In Alaska, orcas are not a monolithic group. They are divided into two distinct populations that share the same waters but live in completely different worlds. These are the residents and the transients, also known as big orcas. The separation between these two groups is one of the most fascinating puzzles in marine biology. Despite living in the same ocean, they do not interact, they do not interbreed, and they speak entirely different vocal dialects. Their diets are the primary wedge between them. Resident orcas are specialized fish eaters, focusing almost exclusively on salmon, particularly the fatty Chinook. Transients, however, are the wolves of the sea. They feed exclusively on other marine mammals, and their hunting strategies reflect a level of cooperative intelligence that is almost chilling, because their prey, seals, sea lions, and porpoises, have acute hearing. Transient orcas hunt in absolute silence. They turn off their echolocation radar to avoid detection, moving like ghosts through the fjords before launching a coordinated strike. One of the most brutal and brilliant techniques documented in Alaskan waters is wave washing. When a seal seeks refuge on a floating ice floe, a pod of transient orcas will swim in formation toward the ice, diving simultaneously to create a massive synchronized wave that washes the seal off its perch and back into the water. Once the prey is in the sea, there is no escape. The orcas will use their powerful tails to toss the seal into the air or batter it until it is incapacitated. They have even been observed intercepting gray whale mothers and calves during their annual migration from Mexico. In a grueling battle that can last for hours, the orcas work in teams to separate the calf from its mother, eventually pushing the young whale underwater to drown it. In a display of strategic consumption, they often eat only the most nutritious parts, the tongue and lower jaw, before leaving the rest of the carcass to sink, a calculated move to maximize energy gain for the effort expended. In contrast, the resident orcas lead a life defined by vocal complexity and family bonds. They live in large pods of 20 to 40 individuals, and unlike their silent cousins, they are incredibly vocal. Each pod possesses its own unique dialect, a cultural signature passed down from mother to calf over generations. This communication is structurally comparable to the complexity of primitive human languages, used to coordinate the herding of salmon schools. They follow the silver pulse of the salmon runs with mathematical precision, their lives dictated by the health of the rivers and the timing of the tides. Sharing these coastal waters is another marine giant, the Steller sea lion. These are the largest of the otariids, with adult males weighing over 1,000 kilograms. They are formidable creatures, characterized by a thick mane of fur around their necks and a roar that can be heard for miles across the rocky outcroppings. During the summer, dominant males establish breeding territories on isolated islands, defending harems of up to 30 females, with monumental displays of aggression. These battles are bloody and visceral, involving bone-crushing bites and powerful lunges as males fight to ensure their genetic legacy. However, the Steller sea lion is currently at the center of a profound biological mystery. In the western reaches of Alaska, their population has collapsed dramatically over the last few decades. The scientific community is still debating the cause, investigating a complex web of variables, including shifting ocean currents, the overfishing of their primary food sources, pollution, and increased predation by transient orcas. It is a reminder that even a predator of this scale is vulnerable to the shifting tides of an ecosystem in flux. While the sea lions guard their rocky fortresses, a much smaller and seemingly more delicate predator works the kelp forests in the shallower depths. The sea otter is one of the few non-human animals to have mastered the use of tools, a necessity for a creature that feeds on hard-shelled prey, like sea urchins, clams, and mussels. The otter's technique is a marvel of adaptation. It selects a specific stone from the seafloor, tucks it into a loose fold of skin under its arm, a natural pocket, and carries it to the surface. Floating on its back, the otter uses its chest as an anvil, striking the shell against the stone until it shatters. Some otters are known to keep a favorite stone for their entire lives, a personal tool that they guard with care. This tool use is not just a clever trick. It is the engine behind the sea otter's role as a keystone species. By consuming vast quantities of sea urchins, the otters prevent these grazers from decimating the kelp forests. Without the otters, the urchins would turn the vibrant underwater jungles into barren wastelands. Where the otter thrives, the kelp grows tall, providing a nursery for countless species of fish, crabs, and marine birds. The otter's presence literally defines the health and structure of the entire coastal environment, proving that the smallest actions can have the most profound ecological consequences. This delicate web of life, from the tool-using otter to the silent hunting orca, represents a world where every creature is a specialist, and every strategy is a response to the unforgiving demands of the North. The question that remains is how much more strain this intricate system can take before the threads begin to snap. This historical vulnerability was most evident during the 18th and 19th centuries, when the sea otter was hunted nearly to the brink of extinction. The very adaptation that allowed them to survive the frigid north, their fur, became their greatest curse. It is the densest in the animal kingdom, with up to 1 million hairs per square centimeter, a biological insulation so effective that it became the ultimate luxury prize for Russian and American fur traders. By the turn of the 20th century, only a few thousand individuals remained across the entire North Pacific. It took the International Fur Seal Treaty of 1911 to halt the slaughter, allowing the population to slowly reclaim its ancestral waters. Today, Alaska's sea otter populations are considered healthy, though they remain under constant scientific surveillance. This recovery stands as one of the most significant conservation successes of the modern era, a rare instance where human intervention successfully reversed a downward spiral toward biological erasure. But the Arctic calendar waits for no recovery. As the brief, intense summer begins to wane, the landscape undergoes a rapid, almost violent transformation. September arrives not with a slow fade, but with a sharp drop in temperature and a thinning of the light that signals the end of the seasonal feast. The first dusting of snow coats the Brooks Range, and the great migration patterns shift once more. The caribou begin their long trek south, the grizzlies scramble for their final caloric reserves, and a creature that has remained largely invisible during the height of summer suddenly becomes a focal point of the tundra's preparation for the long dark. This is the muskox, a living relic of the Pleistocene that seems to have stepped directly out of a prehistoric cave painting. The muskox is an evolutionary anomaly, a survivor of the same ice age that claimed the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed cat. It is not a true ox, but rather a member of the caprinae subfamily, more closely related to sheep and goats, though its sheer bulk suggests otherwise. Weighing between 200 and 400 kilograms, the muskox is armored in the longest hair of any land mammal. Its outer coat, known as guard hairs, can reach lengths of 60 centimeters, forming a sweeping, wind-proof cape that brushes the snow. Beneath this lies a secondary layer called kivyut, a fine, internal wool that is considered 8 times warmer than sheep's wool and finer than cashmere. This dual-layered system allows the muskox to stand motionless in the face of a blizzard that would freeze the marrow of any other creature. While the muskox is a grazer, its survival strategy against predators is a masterclass in collective defense. When a threat, usually a wolf pack, appears on the horizon, the herd does not flee. Instead, they form a defensive circle, a literal wall of muscle and horn. The adult males and females stand on the perimeter, facing outward, with their massive, downward-curving horns, ready to gore any intruder. The calves are tucked safely into the center of this living fortress. For thousands of years, this strategy was impenetrable. A wolf pack has little chance against a phalanx of 400-kilogram tanks. However, this same instinctual brilliance became a death trap when faced with the human rifle. Because the muskox refused to run, hunters could stand in one place and systematically eliminate an entire herd. By the end of the 19th century, the muskox was completely extinct in Alaska. The return of the muskox is perhaps the most poetic conservation story in the state's history. In 1930, scientists captured 34 individuals from Greenland and released them onto a protected island. The herd grew slowly, meticulously monitored, until they were eventually redistributed to various regions across the Alaskan tundra. Today, approximately 4,000 muskoxen roam free, their prehistoric silhouettes once again haunting the Arctic plains. It is a silent victory, a testament to the idea that even when a species is functionally dead in a landscape, the right management can bring back the ghosts of the past. Yet, while the giants of the tundra capture our attention, the forests of the interior house smaller, more agile killers that are often overlooked in the grand narrative of the North. The American marten is a prime example. Weighing only 1 or 2 kilograms, this member of the mustelid family possesses the tactical mind of a much larger predator. With its long, slender body and squirrel-like agility, the marten is a specialist of the dense spruce forests. It can climb a tree with the speed of a ladder-climbing machine and navigate subterranean tunnels with effortless grace. It is a killing machine, disguised in soft brown fur, capable of taking down prey significantly larger than itself through sheer tenacity and precision. Its larger relative, the fisher, is even more formidable. The fisher is one of the few predators in North America that has mastered the art of killing a porcupine. It is a hunt that requires extreme patience and a high tolerance for risk. The fisher attacks the porcupine's face repeatedly, avoiding the deadly quills until the prey is exhausted and succumbs to its wounds. This calculated high-stakes hunting style proves that in the Alaskan wilderness, size is rarely the deciding factor in the outcome of a conflict. Instead, it is the ability to exploit a specific vulnerability in an opponent's defense. This theme of tactical superiority extends beneath the surface of Alaska's vast network of rivers and lakes. The northern pike is the undisputed ambush master of the freshwater systems. Growing up to 1.2 meters in length and reaching weights of 20 kilograms, the pike is a streamlined torpedo equipped with a mouthful of hundreds of needle-sharp, backward-curving teeth. It does not chase its prey, it waits. Camouflaged among the aquatic vegetation, the pike remains perfectly still until a fish, a frog, or even a small duckling passes within range. Then, in a burst of speed that few freshwater fish can match, it strikes. Once those hooked teeth latch on, there is no escape. The pike's role in the ecosystem is that of a silent regulator, maintaining the balance of the waterways through a strategy of pure, unadulterated patience. However, the pike and all other predators of the north ultimately owe their existence to a single, extraordinary biological phenomenon: the salmon run. The salmon is the hidden hero of the Alaskan ecosystem, the primary engine that drives the entire nutrient cycle of the region. 5 species of Pacific salmon, Chinook, sockeye, coho, pink, and chum, undergo a life cycle that is as tragic as it is vital. They are born in the freshwater gravel of inland streams, migrate to the vast pastures of the Pacific Ocean to grow, and then, driven by an ancestral homing instinct, return to the exact same river where they were born to spawn and die. The mechanics of this journey are a marvel of natural engineering. Scientists believe salmon navigate the thousands of miles of open ocean using the Earth's magnetic field as a compass. As they approach the coast, they switch to a chemical navigation system, using an olfactory sense so precise it can detect a single drop of home water in millions of gallons of ocean. They are literally smelling their way back to their birthplace. For the Chinook, the largest of the species, this return can mean a journey of over 3,000 kilometers upriver, pushing against rapids and leaping over waterfalls, all while their bodies are slowly decomposing. When the salmon arrive, the entire Alaskan wilderness responds. This is not just a migration, it is a massive transfer of biomass from the ocean to the land. As the salmon spawn and die, their bodies release critical amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus into the ecosystem. The grizzlies and wolves that feast on the salmon do not just eat for themselves, they act as distributors. By dragging carcasses into the woods and leaving the remains, they fertilize the soil. Scientific studies have traced marine isotopes, specifically nitrogen-14 and nitrogen-15, found only in the ocean, in the rings of trees growing over 100 meters away from the riverbanks. These trees are, quite literally, built from salmon. Without this influx of marine nutrients, the coastal forests would not be as lush, the grizzlies would not reach their massive proportions, and the bald eagles would not congregate in their thousands. The salmon is the living bridge between the sea and the forest, a biological sacrifice that ensures the survival of almost every other species in the state. If the salmon were to disappear, the Alaskan ecosystem would not just change, it would collapse. This makes the current threats to the salmon population a matter of existential importance. Overfishing, habitat loss due to industrial development, and the warming of the oceans are all putting unprecedented pressure on these fish. One of the most controversial flashpoints in this struggle is the proposed pebble mine near Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay is the most productive sockeye salmon fishery in the world, responsible for nearly half of the global supply. Critics and biologists argue that a large-scale mining operation in such a sensitive watershed would represent an ecological catastrophe of biblical proportions. A single failure in the mine's waste management system could poison the headwaters that sustain millions of fish, leading to a permanent breakdown of the nutrient pump that feeds the entire region. The management of these fisheries is perhaps the most complex geopolitical and biological challenge in the state. Alaska currently employs some of the most rigorous sustainable fishing practices in the world, with biologists counting every single fish that enters major river systems and closing seasons the moment a population threshold is threatened. It is a system where science takes precedence over immediate profit, a rare example of long-term thinking in a world driven by short-term gains. This careful balance is what allows the salmon to continue their cycle, but as the climate shifts and industrial interests grow, the pressure on this management system is reaching a breaking point. As the salmon run concludes and the carcasses drift downstream, the Alaskan landscape begins to harden. By October, the light has become a precious commodity, and the frost no longer thaws during the day. The bears have retreated to their dens, their bodies heavy with the fat of 1,000 salmon, and the wolves have tightened their social bonds in preparation for the nomadic hunts of the winter. The seasonal cycle is nearing its completion, but the transition back into the deep freeze brings with it a final set of challenges for those who remain active. The landscape is becoming a world of shadows and silence, where the margins for error are non-existent and the cost of a single mistake is absolute. The predators that stay awake through the coming months are not just hunters, they are the ultimate specialists of the dark, surviving on the narrowest of caloric margins in a territory that has once again become a kingdom of ice. The true test of their evolutionary design is about to begin as the sun prepares to dip below the horizon for the final time of the year. Among these shadows, a figure emerges that is often overlooked in the shadow of the polar bear, yet its presence tells a more immediate story of a changing world. This is the Alaskan red fox. Despite its common name, this is no ordinary fox. In the harsh environment of the north, it has evolved into a formidable predator, reaching weights of up to 10 kilograms, significantly larger than its relatives to the south. Its fur is a masterpiece of insulation, with a tail so thick and bushy that the fox uses it as a literal muffler, wrapping it around its nose to preheat the air it breathes while sleeping on the open snow. But the red fox is more than just a survivor. It is an opportunist and an aggressor. As the climate warms, this species is pushing further north, encroaching on territories once held exclusively by the Arctic fox. The red fox is larger, stronger, and more adaptable, and where the two species meet, the red fox invariably displaces its smaller cousin. This is a silent, creeping invasion, a biological marker of the shifting thermal boundaries of the planet. It is a reminder that in the Arctic, the arrival of a new predator is not just a change in the local fauna, it is a symptom of a systemic collapse of the old order. This adaptability is a recurring theme across the Alaskan wilderness, found even in the reproductive strategies of the lynx. We have already seen how the lynx is tied to the cycle of the snowshoe hare, but the depth of this connection is even more profound than a simple predator-prey relationship. The lynx possesses a biological volume knob that it adjusts based on the availability of food. In years of hare scarcity, a female lynx may not produce a single kitten, her body intuitively sensing that the environment cannot support new life. However, during the peak of the hare cycle, her fertility skyrockets. A female that typically raises 2 kits may suddenly produce a litter of 5 or 6. This flexibility allows the population to explode almost overnight, saturating the forest with hunters to take advantage of the temporary glut of prey. It is a ruthless, efficient logic. When the land gives, the lynx takes everything. When the land withdraws, the lynx retreats into a state of survivalist austerity. It is nature's way of ensuring that the predator never outpaces the capacity of its environment to recover. This delicate balance of boom and bust is what conservationists strive to protect in Alaska's vast network of parks and refuges. These are not merely lines on a map, they are the last bastions of a truly wild north. Denali National Park, spanning nearly 25,000 square kilometers, serves as a living laboratory for the study of grizzly bears and wolves in their most natural state. Further northeast, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge stands as one of the most critical pieces of the global ecological puzzle. It is the birthplace of the porcupine caribou herd, a place where the ancient rhythm of migration continues without the interference of fences or roads. But this refuge is also a flashpoint of human conflict. For decades, it has been the center of a political tug-of-war over oil drilling rights on its coastal plain. To a geologist, this land represents billions of barrels of energy. To a biologist, it is the nursery of the Arctic. If industrialization pierces this specific zone, the porcupine herd, one of the largest and most stable in the world, could collapse. And with it, the Gwich'in people, who have built their entire culture and spiritual life around the caribou for millennia, would lose their foundation. In Alaska, conservation is never just about biology. It is a battle for the soul of the land and the survival of human traditions that predate modern civilization. The Yukon-Charlie Rivers National Preserve further protects the corridors of the Yukon River, a vital artery for moose, caribou, and the carnivores that follow them, ensuring that the pulse of the wilderness remains uninterrupted by the noise of the modern world. High above these political and ecological battlegrounds, the mountain goat lives a life defined by gravity and ritual. These are the white ghosts of the coastal ranges, creatures that inhabit the most impossible inclines where no predator can follow. Their hooves are a marvel of biological engineering, featuring a hard outer rim for grip and a soft, suction cup-like pad in the center that allows them to scale near vertical walls. For the mountain goat, the primary threat is not the wolf or the bear, but the environment itself. They live on the literal edge of a precipice every day of their lives. A single misplaced step, a betrayal by a patch of black ice, or a sudden avalanche can end a life in an instant. They are masters of a vertical world, camouflaged perfectly against the snow, yet they are entirely at the mercy of the mountain's shifting moods. Sharing these high-altitude fortresses is the Dall sheep, a wild sheep distinguished by its pure white coat and the massive spiraling horns of the rams. These horns are more than just weapons. They are a biography. A biologist can estimate the age of a ram by counting the growth rings on his horns, each ridge marking a year of survival against the Alaskan winter. By the time a ram reaches 12 or 13 years of age, his horns may weigh over 15 kilograms, a massive burden to carry while navigating cliffs that would make a world-class climber tremble. During the rut, the sound of these horns clashing in ritual combat is like a gunshot echoing through the valleys, a primitive percussion that signals the continuation of the lineage. It is a spectacular, violent dance performed on the roof of the world, where only the strongest and most resilient are permitted to pass on their genes. But as the seasons shift and the focus moves from the peaks back to the sea, we encounter perhaps the most sophisticated example of cooperative survival in the entire state. Every summer, thousands of humpback whales arrive in the waters of Southeast Alaska, having completed a grueling migration from their breeding grounds in Hawaii and Mexico. They come here for one reason: to feed. And it is here that they perform a behavior found in almost no other place on Earth: bubble net feeding. This is not just hunting, it is a choreographed aquatic ballet. A group of whales locates a school of herring or sand lance. One whale dives deep and begins to release a steady stream of bubbles while swimming in an upward spiral. These bubbles form a shimmering, circular curtain that traps the fish in a shrinking column of water. Simultaneously, other members of the group emit a series of coordinated, haunting screams, a sonic wall that terrifies the fish and drives them toward the center of the trap. At the precise moment when the prey is most concentrated, the entire group surges upward together, mouths agape, swallowing thousands of fish in a single, massive gulp. This level of communication and cooperation is a testament to the high cognitive function of these marine giants. It is a reminder that in the Alaskan wilderness, intelligence is just as vital a survival tool as thick fur or sharp claws. We have now come to the end of our journey through the most brutal and beautiful landscape in North America. After traveling from the frozen sea ice of the north to the lush, salmon-filled rivers of the south, what is the final portrait of Alaska? It is many things at once. It is the last great wild refuge of the Northern Hemisphere, a place where the rules of the Pleistocene still apply. It is a living laboratory where every theory of evolution is tested against the most extreme conditions imaginable. It is a brutal calendar where every season has its heroes and its victims. It is a mosaic of landscapes so diverse that it feels like 4 continents stacked on top of one another. It is the home of the polar bear walking on a frozen ocean, the wolverine tearing meat from frozen bone, the wolf coordinating a hunt that lasts for days, and the brown bear growing into a giant on a diet of silver salmon. It is the realm of the orca teaching its calf to hunt with artificial waves, the eagle reigning over the river, the snowy owl flying in the perpetual sun, the caribou crossing a continent every year, and the humpback whale weaving nets out of air and sound. But Alaska is also a warning. It is the place where climate change is manifesting faster than anywhere else on the inhabited planet. It is where the ice that sustains the entire ecosystem is melting at a speed that evolution cannot keep pace with. It is where the polar bear is losing its footing, where the caribou is losing its path, where the salmon is losing its temperature, and where the permafrost is releasing the carbon that the planet has guarded for millennia. What happens in Alaska does not stay in Alaska. The health of the Arctic affects the global climate, the ocean currents, the wind patterns, and the temperature systems that decide whether it rains or doesn't rain on the other side of the world. Everything is connected to the ice of the north. When we lose the Arctic, everyone loses something. The life you see on an African savanna, in a European city, or on a Latin American prairie is connected by an invisible thread to this frozen kingdom. And yet, there is still hope. Alaska still has its predators. It still has its mass migrations. It still has millions of hectares of protected wilderness. It still has indigenous communities guarding this territory, with knowledge passed down through hundreds of generations. It still has biologists, conservationists, photographers, and dreamers working every day to ensure that this wild kingdom continues to exist. The battle is not yet lost, but it is also not won. It is being fought right now, in the decisions we make and the stories we choose to tell. If this journey through the frozen heart of the North has moved you as much as it has moved us, leave a massive like on this video and subscribe to Wild Kingdom so you don't miss our upcoming documentaries. Every like motivates us to continue bringing the most untamed nature on the planet to your screen, and every new subscriber is a vote in favor of keeping these stories alive. We want to hear from you in the comments. Which of the predators we've discussed today impacted you the most? Was it the patient polar bear, the indomitable wolverine, or perhaps the sophisticated humpback whale? Share your thoughts below and join the conversation. The wilderness is calling, and we are just getting started. Until the next expedition, stay wild.